Hi everyone, welcome to this NeuroBox Let's Talk LinkedIn Live. It's great to have your company. And we're going to chat about resilience and the importance of that, especially during the summertime, which is a really interesting conversation. It's great to have your company. I'm Donna Stevenson. I've got shoulder length brown hair and I'm wearing a white NeuroBox t-shirt. And I'm joined by a brilliant guest as we're going to talk about resilience and explore what that means at this time of year especially. I'm joined by John Hicks. Hi, John.
Hey, Donna, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. I'm really excited about this one because I feel like it's a conversation that we don't chat a lot about, but I'm going to explore more as we get going because I want to introduce you first.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're John Hicks, of course you are. And amongst many other things, John, since 2012, you've been working with neurodivergent clients, especially around your coaching practice. You're also a marketing consultant, and I know I've really enjoyed listening to you over many years now as a keynote speaker at many events, talking about one of your specialisms, which is neurodiversity and emotional well-being. And that's why we wanted to reach out to chat with you about resilience as well. So first of all, John, if you want to share a few thoughts about, on the back of your my introduction of you, and then we can get chatting about resilience and what it actually is and it means for us.
Of course, I'd be happy to. Well, for starters then, so hi everyone. Yes, my name is John Hicks. So I am somebody who's quite tall. I have curly brown hair and a checked maroon shirt. I've got a lot less hair than Donna, so maybe that's an age thing, but I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today to talk about a topic that is really close to my heart. It's something that I've had to battle with, being neurodiverse myself. I am married, I live in Cambridge, I have two daughters who are neurodiverse, and I know they've had their challenges with resilience over the years as they've sort of got to understand themselves better. So in terms of what I'm doing now, I'm a therapeutic counsellor and I have a private practice here in the village of Sawston, which is about 7 miles south of Cambridge. And I also deliver management training. I'm currently doing a lot of work at Papworth Hospital, working with a lot of new managers who are exploring how to develop their leadership skills. And often that is a key ground for talking about resilience. When we work with people, things get messy. Everyone's different. There's lots of curveballs, lots of things that take place that are very, very maybe unpredictable. And for some of us that are neurodiverse, unpredictability is potentially the killer of productivity. So a lot of my clients I'm working with are often coming to me with some kind of diagnosis of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and so forth. But that I'm working with them from the perspective of who they are as a person who has neurodiversity as part of their story. So I've not got people coming to me who have got things wrong with them. In my view, I've got people who come to me with their own unique mix of strengths and weaknesses, where I work with them to help them to manage those weaknesses so that their strengths can shine, depending upon the context they're working in.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And thank you for all that you do for our community. It's such important work, really. And I guess on the back of that, this idea of resilience, and it's a real buzzword these days, isn't it? We've appreciated, I think, over the last few years, the importance of this when we're thinking about mental health. And we've talked a lot on these Let's Talk series around mental health and well-being with various guests, but also about, how we can navigate through the world of work, including the home life balance and juggling. And I think more than ever, summertime is a time that for some of us, as wonderful as it is, it can be quite disruptive because, again, as wonderful as it is, we've got our children or our grandchildren with us and we're still trying to juggle, our working practices and so on. That's a challenge for everyone. And I saw somebody posted something up last night on LinkedIn and said, as my kids have just left, signed out of school now, ready for the summer holidays, can anyone advise me on how I'm going to cope with mum guilt? Because I've got to juggle now having the kids with me, making sure they have a lovely time, but also, a busy day job. And I think for our neurodivergent community, it's a real, issue, resilience in general. But as I say, we wanted to have a chat as we look now towards the school break around, some of the issues that we've got around summertime. As I say, we only ever think it as a wonderful time, and mostly it is. But what I'm thinking of, John, is, as I say, as wonderful as summer is, it's actually kind of a disruptive time for us when we're thinking about our working life.
Mm.
As I say, children being home or grandchildren being with us, colleagues on leave. So we're juggling things, and then you find out your colleague's going to be away for the next couple of weeks, and maybe taking on more tasks and trying to kind of hold the line whilst you've got a depleted team. And also us being on leave, again, as brilliant as that is, it's then preparing to sign out and sign off for a bit, and then coming back and thinking, right, I've got to pick up all these emails and all these different things that's been happening while I was away. How can we make sure that we're trying to navigate through that in a constructive way? And I guess it taps into that resilience.
Yeah, you know what? It's really interesting. I think since the pandemic, I think our attitudes around where we work has changed. Now, I've been self-employed for 12 years, but before I moved into self-employment, I had a number of different roles where I worked from home, and it. Back then, I had no idea about my neurodiversity, and I had no idea about you'd think working from home is a really, really wonderful thing, and yet I think since the pandemic, where this is more accepted now, it's not uncommon for people to have maybe 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or maybe 4 days at home, 1 day in the office, or something like that. I think there's a lot that we're underprepared for in terms of actually, giving ourselves some time to think about what that actually requires in terms of being successful. As you were talking earlier, I remember once I was working for a scientific instrumentation company, and I was responsible for all the sales of this equipment to a company called GlaxoSmithKline, a big pharmaceutical company. So I had a really important client on the phone, and I was talking to them about something about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And literally, as I'm having this conversation, and thankfully the customer and I, we got on really well, so they're quite understanding. But as I'm standing there, my daughter comes in from school. I didn't hear her come in the house, comes right up to me and places a kiss on the side of my cheek. Right, she was like 7 or something like that. Just literally came up to me on the side of my head, like, and this was on a phone call, and all of a sudden my brain went blank. Right, I'm like, I'm supposed to be in this kind of high level conversation about sales with this client, this customer. My daughter's just come in. There's been a clash of if you like two cultures, if you family life and work life, and I was in the middle of it going, completely gone out of my head, and luckily the customer, I just said to him, I said, look, I'm so sorry, my daughter's just given me a kiss. She's just come back from school. And he laughed. He said, yeah, I've got kids and it's great. And I mean, I'm going back probably 15 years there, but actually we've seen videos online of these broadcasters being on a call, and all of a sudden a kid and his wife running in to get the kid because they've just broken into the room.
Or the cats walked across the
desk. The cats walked across, all sorts. Yeah, I mean, I'm sat in my office in my garden, and I've got a main road behind me, so you're going to hear a juggernaut at some point. There's so many things that I think before the pandemic we would have been really worried about. Like trying to get everything right, and then the pandemic's happened. Now we're just living with the fun of working from home. But the reality is, there's so much that can happen that can play to our weaknesses when we're working from home. In my head, and speaking from personal effect, my neurodiverse profile is centered more around ADHD, ADD. I'm not very good at hyper focus, although it happens from time to time. So my concentration and focus is very fragile. And so, for someone who's neurotypical, I think they say on average that if your concentration's broken, you're in the middle of doing something and someone interrupts you, that it takes about 20 minutes to come back to what you're doing. For someone who's neurodiverse, that amount of time is going to be much longer if you've actually even remembered what the thing was you were doing, because you've gone down a rabbit hole. So you've kind of got the distractions that can take place. You've got situations like, if you are, unfortunately, I have my own office in my garden. So I can have a bit of a bubble and I can sort of focus myself. But if you've got like you're working off your dining room table and anyone can walk through at any point, the dog has just spotted the postman, has just started barking at the postman, all those kind of things that can take place. You're trying to concentrate and you can see that the washing hasn't been put out, and it's like for some reason it's bugging you. Ordinarily you don't care less about doing the washing, right? But it's because the task you're doing is actually really difficult in terms of concentration and focus. All of a sudden that really horrible job seems very welcoming, and you're torn. And I think, if you talk about neurodiversity and some of the challenges, the weaknesses we can experience, and I'm going to be very general now because I do believe that no two people are the same in terms of their presentations, but in general terms, we are talking about challenges at times of concentration. Sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes it's too much concentration and we lose track of what is going on around us. Sensory stimuli, are we in a room with no windows, for example, and is that getting us down, or is it like there's noise going off somewhere and we just can't focus because we can hear something in the background? You might hear my creaky chair going off at the moment, and that might be really distracting for you while you're trying to listen to me, for example. Time management, organization, reading and writing comprehension. I can read really, really well, but because of the way my brain struggles to concentrate, if I've got to do a body of work, loads of reading, I'm off it in seconds because it's such a difficulty to drag my attention to it. I'm almost feeling like I'm chaining myself to a desk. Someone else, it may be physically, they've got the concentration, but it's really hard to look at the text and, without intervention, support from assistive technology, that might be a really difficult process. Remembering stuff, working memory is really hard. I'm doing something, interrupted, now I've forgotten what I'm doing, and then like 3 hours later, should have done that thing. Processing speed, people, 2 or 3 things might be going on around us while we're trying to work. We're trying to take in some information from a piece of work on the laptop, for example. Someone else in the family is asking you to do something, and all we're doing is yeah, and none of it's going in. It's just not the environment to help us with that unless we do something about it. We've already mentioned distractibility and mood and irritability as well. Maybe we don't think about that so much with neurodiversity, but if we, I know in my own situation, I can have days where I'm literally bouncing around in terms of my concentration and focus. I'm going to sit down and do this, within seconds I'm doing something else, and then I'm bouncing onto something else, and I can sometimes feel like I'm being not battered around, but it's almost like I'm kind of not staying in the same place, and circumstances are happening to me rather than me being in control of the circumstances. And then at the end of the day, when it's almost a bit lastminute.com, the concentration comes in because you really have only got 40 minutes to finish that thing that you were meant to starting at 9 o'clock, and you get your head in the game, and then all of a sudden the kids come home and they run into the office, "Hi Dad," and it's like, and you react in a certain way because you're frustrated about the neurodiversity, but it can have an impact on relationships.
And this is where your speciality is, John, isn't it? About thinking about well-being in these ways. With everything you've just explained, and as I said talking about summertime, maybe, these things, they happen all the time, but maybe more in the summer because we do have lots
Absolutely.
happening.
Yeah.
How can we find that sense of resilience then within us to try and cope with all these many spinning plates and the kids running in, giving us a lovely kiss and asking us to come and stop, see BBC or whatever because it's gone on the blink, and while we're we're on Zoom or whatever.
I mean, I think the fact is we're emotional beings, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier on in this call, you used the G word, guilt, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're like, we want to do a good job. We want to be a good parent. We want to make sure our relationships at home are good. And we can often feel really guilty, and we can berate ourselves for not doing things to perfection. And I use the word perfection not because there's a standard of perfection, but I think in a lot of cases we perhaps set ourselves an unrealistic target to be perfect in what we do, and then we can kind of berate ourselves a little bit for not achieving that, even though we're never going to achieve it. And I think what it requires is a little bit of self-compassion. When I'm talking about resilience with clients, and when I'm doing workshops on resilience, the thing that I talk about mostly, the two key things, is one about compassion, but the other one is self-awareness, and there's something in there about acceptance as well. It's like, well, if we can actually give ourselves a moment to realize who we are, we spend so much time trying to be something that we're perhaps not. We bow to peer pressure. We try and be like that person who looks like they're brilliant at what they do and they get everything covered. But what we don't see is what happens in their personal life outside of what they present with in terms of a mask, and so we make judgments, and then as a result that affects us. If I can just show a graphic
Yes, I'd love
on the screen.
Yeah.
This is something I talk people through, and it's a really useful model that a lot of my clients remember. But I mentioned earlier on about self-awareness, is understanding what's taking place, right? So this diagram is called the CBT model, cognitive behavioral therapy model, and it's really simple, and it really is telling you the obvious, right? So the idea here is that if we have a thought, that's likely to lead to a feeling, which is then likely to lead to some kind of behavior. So if I can share an example, Donna, if I mention the word spider to you, what's your reaction to that? Cute. Okay.
Yes, I think spiders are cute. Did you think I was going to say I was frightened of them?
You know what? When I used to do this, I would get I'd expect the unfrightened, and then actually I wouldn't get it, and I thought actually it doesn't matter, right? The fact is, I've said spider to you, and you've gone, they're cute in a really nice way. Like you clearly, your body language, your face lit up. You're like, actually, I really like spiders. They're great, right? Yeah. So what I've done is I've put a thought in your head just by saying a word. You will have had some kind of emotional change as a result of thinking about spiders, and then actually your body language and the way you were talking about it has changed. I did this workshop for a group of colleagues the other week, and I was standing next to the seats were out like a sort of a U shape, and I was kind of standing against a wall in the middle of this U shape, looking at a PowerPoint in front of us. And I said, if I mentioned spider, what would you do? And I literally had someone next to me jump out of her chair going, spiders!
Like that. Even the word frightens her. John.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the thing is, what's going on is that in our heads, we've got this like filing cabinet, right, of all of our experiences to date. We've got the sensors on our bodies here, our hearing, our sight, our touch, our taste, whatever we're sensing with our fingers and our sort of body and so forth. And that all gets stuffed into this filing cabinet that's in our head. And then we start we're trying to make sense of all these experiences. And then what happens is things take place, and we rifle through that filing cabinet. You've just done that. You've gone, spiders. Actually, I know spiders are lovely. I like spiders. They're safe. They're cuddly. They're, whatever your experience has been in the past. And then that brings about some kind of feeling, and because you've made some conclusion in your mind, and then that comes out in your behavior. The other person I'd said this to, fear straight away, right? They probably didn't even go to conscious thought. It was probably subconscious. Spiders, protect myself. Right, feelings, behavior. So, and this can happen in any kind of stimuli. If I showed a picture of a cake, for example, I'm sure that might have an impact as well. Or maybe feel hungry or whatever. So if we are someone who's neurodiverse and we've had difficulties in terms of our own sort of emotional development over the years, what I'm going to share is, and you'll be familiar with this, Donna, because I'm always talking about this. I did a survey in 2009 for the BDA, and we were looking at the emotional impact of dyslexia on children. So I'd surveyed 1,300 parents, and almost 90% of those parents said to me that they felt that their child's self-esteem had dropped because of their experience of being dyslexic at school. Now, it wasn't a scientific survey, but for me, 1,300 people, that's a lot of people telling me that self-esteem is an issue for a child with dyslexia. So if you then think, well, so then these kids go through school and they go into the workplace, unless there's intervention, unless they're actually exploring those feelings of poor self-esteem, they're going to carry that with them into the workplace. So if we then think about this model, right, if we imagine we have a bad day at work, we've not been very, very productive, and our neurodiversity's got in the way. We're going to talk about some of the physical issues of summer, but if we're really hot or environmentally it's not working for us and we just can't concentrate, we didn't sleep the night before, then we might be worried about how good we're going to be and whether or not we're going to be productive. That extra level of anxiety is being heaped on, despite the difficulty of maybe managing some of the weaknesses of neurodiversity. And with that will come the feelings of anxiety, and then that might even distract us. Just even thinking we're going to have a bad day. And then at the end of the day, we start berating ourselves because I'm always like this. I'm always having bad days. I'm useless, right? We may not articulate it as adults because we don't like to say it. But if we haven't actually worked with poor self-esteem and thought about it and understood what's going on, then it's always going to be the thing that's going to dog us a little bit and cause us challenges when we're trying to really focus. So, whether it's the summer or not, and we're working from home, or whether we're in the office and we've got distractions and everything's working against us, the resilience piece here is being able to recognize, have the space to step out of whatever it is you're in right now and go, okay, everything is not right for me to be at my best right now. I need to do something about this, rather than fall into I'm always like this. It's going to be another one of those days. This is awful, right? So the behavior turns into something different. We move from being stuck to a more of a proactive mindset that then brings about better behavior in terms of being more productive and so forth. So I think the resilience piece, really, it starts with the self-awareness and being able to, in the moment, go, okay, what's going on with me? I want to share this. I've got a quote here that, here we go. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who was Jewish in the 40s, and he ended up in Auschwitz. I'd like to be able to say that I read his fantastic book. It is a fantastic book. I read the first few pages, and I struggle with reading personally. But what I did get out of that book was this quotation. And before I read the quotation out, you can read it while I'm saying this. He was famous for having a different take on the suffering in Auschwitz. You imagine being in one of those huts. You're expecting your downfall anytime now. You're hungry, you're cold, it's awful conditions. And this guy was famous for sitting there in the middle of all this suffering and looking out of a window and seeing a robin dancing on a fence, right? And in that moment, he was able to shift his focus and sit with the joy of the robin rather than sit with the fear of the impending doom. And he survived. He came out of Auschwitz, but there was something about, even in the most dire situation, it is possible to step out emotionally from it, and have a bit of mental wiggle room. And his quote is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And what that means is, if we allow ourselves a moment to go, what's really going on here? What can I do about this that increases the probability of doing what I need to do?
Yeah.
It may mean taking.
Yeah, really moving. Is that the answer then? I mean, a quote like this and what you just share about Victor's journey, it puts everything else into total perspective, doesn't it? We're talking about here very minor issues, compared to this type of a journey, but real to folks nevertheless. And what I'm gathering from what you're saying here, John, because this is really new to me, it's by having that space or that moment that, those bubbles that you shared, that little journey that we often go on with our thoughts and responses, is the ability to step out and try and break the cycle, the way that we try and create more positivity and avoid, like you saying, catastrophize and I'm always doing this and I'm, beating yourself up. I talked earlier about, that person who posted last night on LinkedIn, can anyone help me with mum guilt? Break out the guilt and so on.
Yeah.
Is that the way that we break out and try and then create more resilience within ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's no silver bullet. There's no light switch moment where everything changes.
Yes.
I think, and I don't have any science to back this up, but this is kind of what my mind's got to over many years of a lot of the work that I've done over the number of years is content creation with the Studying with Dyslexia blog that I had for a while. I'd have days where I'd be really passionate about something I wanted to write about. I mean, I was like really passionate. This is really important. I'm going to help families and kids. And then I'd sit down and start writing, and being in that situation where I'm having to sit down, focus and concentrate, everything in me wanted to run away. Right. So then I became very distracted and very kind of like not on the ball, not focused. And, 500 words of a blog article might take me 4 or 5 hours by the time I actually got it written. And I could have done it in half an hour. Right. And I remember at the time, the emotional side of that was such that I was getting frustrated with myself. I was judging myself. I was getting quite down because the next day was going to be another day of writing 2 or 3 articles, and I had to focus, and I was dreading it. Right. I loved what I did, and I loved the impact of what I did, and I was passionate about it, but it played to my weaknesses. And so what I had to do is I did get some access to work support, and I got some coaching that helped me change up how I worked so I could make that easier. But I think what was really important, an important step for me was just accepting that I've got strengths and I've got weaknesses, and that by accepting that and going, okay, today was a bad day, but that's okay. Tomorrow could be a lot better, right? And then I think what I did with that, for me, in terms of my own process, was being able to chip away at the things that got in the way, so that over time I was training, if you like, the correct emotional muscles to be able to respond and do what I need to do. Now, I'm not the most productive person when it comes to writing stuff down, and that's part of the reason why I've chosen to go down the route of being a therapeutic counsellor, because where I can't focus really well with writing stuff, when I'm in the room with someone, I'm focusing on everything that's taking place in that room. And I need the skills that come with my way of thinking to be able to support my clients. I'm looking at body language. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm being very aware of environmentally of what's going on in the room. And all of this is, I'm using that information to guide me so that I can facilitate my clients with their development and help them to find strategies that work for them. And I
Really?
can do that 5 hours on the trot and not blink. But put me in front of a book or put me in front of a Word document, it's seconds.
Yeah.
And it is about understanding how that works and being able to go, yeah, I would love to be able to do the kind of work that we all do this. I'd love to be in that kind of job that pays well and does this, does blah, 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 I've got this, I've got that, blah, 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 blah. But I've got to be the round peg in the square hole to do it. And that can be hard. Being able to go, okay, well, who am I? What is going on? What do I need? If I am going to sit at a desk all day and I know I've got a heavy day ahead of me, I need some strategies to deal with that. Right? I need to not hope for the best. If I was we've got the Olympics coming up, haven't we? And we don't have athletes going to the Olympics and going, well, I'm just going to wing it. Right? They have been preparing for months for their heart, body, and mind, body, and soul. Everything is being looked at in terms of what their needs are, so that they can be at their best, so they can peak when at the Olympics. And I think in many cases we don't do that with our mental well-being. We might sign up to the gym and do the physical stuff, but we don't do the mental well-being thing and go, okay, what do I need to be at my best? What is it? And what are the things that I need to make precious so that I'm in a better position to cope with the challenges that come with the next day? Personally, if I get a bad night's sleep, and the summer's a good example of that, it's too hot, then it's likely to make it harder the next day for me to focus and concentrate. So what do I need to do to counter that? Maybe I need to go to bed earlier. Maybe I need to not have a beer in an evening. That might, whatever that is, what are those things that we know put us in a better place? Rather than judge ourselves for being not very good at concentrating, it's actually going, okay, right, I know what I can do to increase the probability of that, but I've got to ask for it. I've got to learn how to advocate for it. It can be really hard to have that conversation with people, particularly at home, right? I remember when I left my last job, I was out of work for about 3 months, and I remember being really worried because my memory and my focus and concentration, it just went through the floor. All of my boundaries had changed. I didn't have the 9 to 5. I wasn't going to an office every day. I'd left the job. I didn't particularly want to leave that job, but there was a story there, and that was unpleasant. What I experienced, and all of that culminated into my cognitive well-being being shot. I genuinely thought I'd got early onset dementia. I was forgetting everything, right? And it was really interesting to kind of like, I'd do things like I'd be going to the shops 3 times in a day because I'd go on the first visit, get something, come back, and then an hour later go, I didn't get it. Right, go back to the shop, get the next thing. Forgotten that other thing. Go back to the shop, get the next thing. Yeah, I was being battered around by circumstances. And then my wife would say, using the shop example, in an evening, John, could you just get these things from the shop? Could you get? And I'm like, well, I've got milk because I like my cereal in the morning, so I'm motivated to get that. That's stuck in my head. But I'd go, yeah, no problem at all. I'd get to the shops, and then I'd go, oh no. All I can remember is milk. I've got 6 things to remember, and I've forgotten a lot. I get on the phone, love, what are those things I needed? And they go, well, I told you these, why didn't you, and there's frustration on both sides. I'm berating myself, she's frustrated. And then after a while, it's like, well, this is ridiculous. Okay, my memory's not great. Maybe I'll just accept that for the time being. And maybe, okay, love, with that shopping list, slow down. I need a minute just to write these down. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. Great. Right, what was it needed? Right, milk. Yeah, I've got that. That's the important one. Right, yeah, pretty good. And I go to the shops. I've got what I need. I can do the thing I need to do. I can increase the probability of being successful because I've negotiated getting what I need. And that can work in terms of how we're relating to each other, how we're talking to each other. Actually, this is getting confrontational. I need a moment. Can we just come back to this? And let's come back at it.
It sounds like there's patterns there, John. And what I'm taking away from this as we round this conversation up, as we think about having a happy and safe summer and getting the most out of this wonderful time of year, part of it is about, I suppose, in very simplistic ways, it's about being kind to ourselves, isn't it? And not having these huge expectations.
Absolutely.
And maybe, you know, like you say, preparing and making sure that we have what we need in place. On the back of that then, John, as we say goodbye to everyone, and this is a real challenge because it's going to be a big question I'm going to ask you put in a small response.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
What would you say about, you know, as we look now to the summer holidays for us, you know, how can we have a very resilient summer holiday so that when we go back, you know, into our more routine way of living in the autumn time, that we feel like we've had a break and refreshed in some way? What can help with our resilience during this time?
I think the bottom line is, and again, it's really simple. The starting point is the self-awareness, accepting who we are, also accepting that we can change and that we can put things in place to make a difference. Right? Maybe that is talking to the kids and saying, "Look, kids, I need an hour from you just to go and do your thing, but I need an hour to do this piece of work, and then we'll go off and do something nice." You know, whatever that is, it's being able to go, how can I make sure that I have everything I need to really feel like I'm living a fulfilling life, getting the rest I need. You know, what is it that's going to recharge the batteries? If I need space, I'm going to ask for space. If I need food, we would do this with food, wouldn't we? If we know we're hungry, we're going to get some food. But if we're actually struggling with our social battery, for example, it's really hard to go, look, there's nothing personal. I just need 20 minutes. And I think it's that dialogue and being able to, in industry, we talk about psychological safety.
Yes.
But we don't often apply that to the family scenario. You know, we do talk. We don't use that term associated with family, but I think within a family context and in terms of rest, we need to do everything we can to promote the ability to say, "I just need this. Can you help me with that?"
Yeah.
And to be able to maybe trust people and give people, members of the family, the space to be able to say what they need rather than make an assumption and try and fix them, which can add the pressure on.
Yeah. John, as always, it's been brilliant to listen to you. You know, it's so insightful what you share, and thank you so much for your honesty sharing of yourself, because it really brings it alive, I think, when experts talk about their own lived experience as well. We do hope that those of you who've been listening to this conversation, you know, take away your own ideas and inspiration from it. Yes, we were talking about resilience, but in the context of now, as we go into what we hope will be a wonderful and happy and safe summer holidays for you and your family, and one that is full of resilience as well. So thank you for your company, and we look forward to welcoming you next time around when we have our Let's Talk conversations. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.